Fantastic, Neil. How about you?
Fantastic. And our guest today is New York Times bestselling author Lincoln Child. Lincoln, thanks for stopping by. It was interesting. I talked to your co-author about the story of how you guys really just rocked it out as writers. And it's a dream, isn't it, Lincoln, for every writer to get to where you're at?
Yes, it is. It's a dream it's the whole industry has changed. When I was young, the bestseller list had three or four big names on it, and you had to try and join that small club. And I remember my agent saying we were lucky that we were branded in time. We'd established a following. But now, if you look at the list, there's so many books coming out that every week 90% of the names change, and I don't know any of them. It's
Well,
a whole new business.
Lincoln, let me
Yeah.
ask you a quick question. Co-authoring across so many books is rare, and impressive, I think. But what's one strength that each of you brings to writing uh, in this table right now with the Badlands, and what made that especially strong? Do you think?
Well, originally I was a book editor, and Doug was a writer of nonfiction. So he took on the lion's share of the writing initially. I had written a lot of stuff as a kid, but like most people, I saw how much work was involved in getting anything published. And so you know, um, I was like a kid who worked at the ice cream store all day. I didn't want to eat any when I got home. I read it all day as an editor. But anyway, over time, our division became 50-50. I was less the idea man and more the writer. And the division is really interesting because a lot of people we assume we divvy the chapters up one, two, three, four, five, but that wouldn't work. It would make for very discontinuous, uh, sharp changes. So what we do is we each take a sequence or a subplot, or Doug will take the climax of the book, and I'll take some other part of it. And that way, and we try to write to our strengths. For example, in Badlands, which has been getting really good reviews. I mean, we love getting good reviews, and we were surprised at how universal. We have gotten two-star reviews for this book, and I think it's not only, of course, is it the incredibly high standard of writing involved, but that's a joke. But it's the setting, which is the Badlands in northern New Mexico, which, if you go there, it looks like a moonscape. There are these big bulbous pieces of rock called hoodoos that stand hundreds of feet tall, and dry washes and slot canyons, and you wonder who the hell would ever want to go there. Although Doug went camping there 2 weekends ago, so I guess he's right now en route from his house in Santa Fe to Maine, which is why he couldn't join us. But the point is, he knows that area like the back of his hand. He's done 1,000-mile horseback trips through that country where there's no water anywhere nearby. So he was able to really help bring the scenery to life, which is hugely important in a book like that.
Wow.
And it's interesting, Lincoln, when you talk about this because um the whole process of putting together these books and knowing what your audience wants. How important is that when you're writing, like, and you've learned in this process of building your fan base and what that fan base wants on a regular basis?
Uh, it's been a process of learning partly from what we want to see happen to our characters. I mean, for example, our biggest character is an FBI agent named Pendergast, and we did not expect he would take over our books, far less lead us by the nose on all these, investigations of his. So partly it's the organic process of writing, and is seeing where it leads you. And with two authors, of course, there's twice as many ideas, a lot of them bad, and so we have to fight and discuss to get an idea we both like and we think will still be viable 18 months later when the book is published. But the other thing is, as you mentioned, it's the readers and the fans. And we've been to so many book signings, and we always reach out at the book signings and ask what they like about our books, what they don't like, how we can do it differently. And we get tons and tons of email too. And so we try and take, you know, criticism constructively. And there is a lot too. Not so much with the writing, but they don't like it when we kill off dogs, for example. It doesn't matter if 100 Russian uh, um, military, commandos, mercenaries get killed in a battle. But if one dog gets killed, oh my God, you guys are terrible. There are certain things they don't like. Um, and we listen to those. But also, they help us write, and their enthusiasm is infectious and keeps us going because if it wasn't for them, we'd be well, Doug would be hauling garbage. I think I'd be probably, in publishing still.
Well, Lincoln, I got to bring up AI since that's my profession, right? Cybersecurity. So, in a world where AI, really is starting to dominate in many things with this instant content, what is crafting a novel like Badlands that you have layered researching and character-driven stories? What does that mean to you today?
Well, I can only speak to that as what I've heard from Doug, who is on the Authors Guild, and they're addressing this from the point of view of BMI or ASCAP. If there's a huge the pile, if you're an AI, you know what the pile is. How do authors get compensated? Maybe they want to write a story with one of our characters in it, or maybe they want to have a virtual dialogue with him. How does the author get compensated? That's one issue. Another issue is how much can AI be used in a book? I mean, when we first started writing, there was no internet. And so Wikipedia quickly became very useful, and now if you wanted, AI could write the book for you, which would be a huge mistake if you want to be first, you're not going to be proud of yourself. Secondly, it's not that good yet to really be, and third, technically you cannot copyright something written by AI. Um, so, you know, I know it's getting better all the time, and so I can't predict what's going to happen with the LLMs, but I know they have to cough out a new one now, and each time they do, they have to start from scratch. One of the problems that we're having apparently is that people in certain countries um, are taking books, really expensive books like on bridge engineering, for example, $300 textbooks using AI to generate a simulacrum and then get a name like the real author and flood Amazon with them. And so
Mm.
people don't know which is right and which is wrong.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're right. Some people don't know what's right and what's wrong in this process. And I have been doing my due diligence to train authors. This is about research. You can build a lot of research, you can get ideas, but at the end of the day, it's your ability to utilize AI and not let AI write it for you because it's not going to be good, it's not going to be creative, and it's not going to be to the level of brilliant people like you, Lincoln and Douglas. You guys are brilliant. The way you're able to create something and create a character that fits that niche audience that you've built, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. There's no way a movie, anything, the ability of creativity, because you take your personal life experience and have that involved in the process. This is the thing, and Greg will say the same thing, that you as an expert in cybersecurity, Greg, you AI could give you those ideas, but they don't have the firsthand experience that you bring. Right,
Yeah,
Greg?
that's right. That's absolutely true. Just like as in writing, it's you're drawing on your years. I mean, all those years that you've had, in my case, 40 years in business, taking that and moving it forward each year and bringing it along with me and learning from all that. You just can't do that with AI.
It's amazing. I mean, I used to be a programmer, and I I asked AI to write a program in C++ to do something that had taken me 4 hours, and it spit it out in a minute,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was depressing.
Yeah.
But as far as writing goes, if you're a real writer, you wouldn't want AI to do it. And AI is very insidious. It's very helpful tracking down small facts, which you can then use the sources of to do your own research. But then it says, "Do you want me to write up this, blah, blah, blah?" And you have to say, I had to say, no, don't ever offer to write anything. Research is one thing, but the more important point is if you're really a writer, you first of all, you have to enjoy doing it. If a computer's doing it for you, you're not creating it anymore.
Right.
You're telling a machine to create. And secondly, when you write, especially I'm working on my 50th book right now, believe it or not.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
writing the last chapter assigned to me today, I hope. And you get certain mannerisms, certain jokes, a certain tone. We throw in a lot of Easter eggs, stuff from backstories, running jokes, things that AI
Never.
it couldn't quite reproduce that. At least when you've written as many books we have, and I mean, there are people will use it for a scam, just like there's a guy out there called Preston Child, supposedly, who's selling books pretending to be us on Amazon,
Ah.
and they all get 1 star, and people said, "What happened to these guys? They were so good." Um, but it's a real issue. I'm not one of those doomsayers about AI. So far, everything I've seen it do is good. I mean, it still makes mistakes, but it's good. But I imagine, as a cybersecurity person, you're constantly aware of how AI can make malware and Trojans and keyloggers and all the rest of it that much easier.
Yeah, it's needs to be, and this is a great point, Lincoln. And I think that I'm glad you're bringing this up to authors. Is it's great, but if you love writing, if this is your jam, like I literally could have AI come up with questions all the time. I do, but I always want the follow up. I would never ask AI to do my follow up questions. I've done over 15,000 interviews, Lincoln. I do average about 20 to 30 a week. And I'm like, dude, it's like, you're not going to beat me. You could try to by coming up, you're helping me with the research. Thank you. That's fantastic. Then I can do my magic because I don't know where our direction of our conversation is going to go. Greg asked the question, but I think that this is virality stuff, Lincoln, that I'll be throwing out in social media because when is Lincoln Child, New York Times bestselling author, spoke about this? Because this is what I try to give as a platform for people to really share information. And I think it's unfair if they are stealing information. It's unfair if they're taking information, and there has to be better copyright. And honestly, the AI creators can do this. They can put in, you just took we're taking information that is copyrighted. This is information that came from a book. No, an idea is different than the full package. So, that's for sure. I wish I could figure out for my authors that I represent, Lincoln, how can I make you a Lincoln Child? That's the thing. Meaning, how can I make you like you are what so many authors would pay millions of dollars to hear from your knowledge and Preston's knowledge of how they did it. Because guess what? It's the dream of every author to become who you become, having a fan base, going to these autograph signings. I think Greg could share about that too, right, Greg? Lots of people just like that would love to be these guys.
No, they definitely would. And that's a great segue to what I wanted to ask you next, Lincoln. And so looking back on your careers, and you can answer for Douglas also since he's not here, now at Badlands, what moment or milestone are you most proud of, and where do you see your storytelling heading next, especially since you're finishing that last chapter?
Well, before I answer, I just wanted to say, to Neil's point about where we are now, I'm very lucky, very blessed, and have worked hard to get here. But I, on the other hand, look at my fellow authors, many of whom I'm friends with, who've got these boutique series on Netflix or HBO or Apple, and I myself have come within a whisker, 5 times of getting it happen to our books. And at the last minute, it gets rubber stamped by some executive at the last level, and it's really frustrating because I know, and our audience knows, and they're always asking us that our characters would be perfect for a miniseries, or each book could be a season. And so there's always something that I'm looking up at saying, damn it, what? Um, but to Greg, to your point, I think that what this may not be answering your question, but Doug and I had written about 6 books. And the first book was a big success. They made a film of it. It was called Relic. And then there was a sophomore slump. The second book didn't sell as well. And the third book was doing all right. We wrote fantastic, we thought, fourth and fifth books, 6 books. But our audience just was growing really slowly. And Doug was getting disheartened. And I said, don't worry about it. I mentioned some author that I knew personally, I said, it takes you a while to grow your audience, unless you're one of these unicorns that has the girl on the train or something like that, that comes out of nowhere. Um, and then our next book was Cabinet of Curiosities, and something about our characters and our experience over the last 6 books, and listening to feedback from readers, it all gelled into this really interesting book. And when I was going around talking to booksellers for Cabinet of Curiosities, they said, this book is getting some real buzz. And that was the book that really turned it around for us. We realized this guy should be a series character. And that was what, we climbed up and kept on climbing ever since.
Wow. And that's the great thing. You keep going. And that's the biggest thing that people have to understand. You hit that success with Relic, and then you're like, okay, what's happening? Do I give up or I keep going? And you kept going. And because we loved it. You both love what you do.
And your writers, should do the same thing. I mean, I tried writing a novel in high school and it was terrible. But when I went back to revise it, I'd already learned so much about writing that I didn't need to revise it. I could write a new one. And so to the very act of writing, you're teaching yourself. So I tell writers, if you want to write a book, pick an author or authors who you really like, and don't plagiarize them, but see what it is about their style. Is it flowery? Is it concise? How much dialogue is there? And then write about either what you know, excuse me, or what you're interested in. Try and write a book you would like to read. Because when I was in publishing, all the other editors were trying to write the great American novel based on the books they'd published that had done well. And that's just a cynical exercise that won't work, because readers are smart and they can tell when you're writing from the heart or whether you're just trying to make money.
All right. So Greg has a final question, unless you have one more question for Lincoln. And this question, he's asked so many celebrities, he's gotten the opportunity to interview with me for the last 3+ years. But go, Greg.
Yeah, I can't wait to ask you that, but I got to slip in one other quick one if
Okay.
I may, Lincoln. So, on a fun note, so what's one totally unexpected real life fact or historical tidbit that you discovered during researching Badlands that made you and Douglas both say, we have to put this in the book?
Um, There's so much historical information in Badlands about this mysterious tribe, violent, maybe cannibalistic, that nobody knows what happened to them. Um, that it's really hard, but I can point out a fact from the newest book, the Pendergast book we're finishing right now, if that will satisfy you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I learned, and I'm a constant reader of trivia. And if I find things that are very strange, I'll make a note of it. And it turns out that in the 1920s, a common method of suicide was eating the heads of matches. Because at the time, not anymore, you know, call a hotline, don't eat matches. Um, at the time, matches were tipped with phosphorus and other chemicals that were very poisonous. They're not any longer, and this resulted in bodies having a strange yellowish glow to them. And then the smoking stool syndrome, which I will leave alone. But I couldn't believe it when I read it. That was my first thought. And secondly, I said, we've got to sink us into the next book. And
That's awesome.
I can't tell you how often people thank us for introducing them to a new brand of clothing, a new poet, a new musician, or whatever, because we try and put in things that we're learning about in our books as well.
That's fantastic. That's a huge, funny anecdote. I appreciate that. All right. So here we go. Get back to a little bit serious note. Not too serious, though. And, a lot of this is for me and anyone who hopefully is listening to this. Learning from others is, I think, one of the biggest gifts you can have as a human being that can walk, talk, and listen and learn. So tell me, Lincoln, what do you feel is the most important thing in life that you have ever learned?
I'm tempted to, okay. I uh Really it's to I don't know if I can break it down into one single thing, but be kind. Um, don't judge others. Think of where they're coming from first and what their past is. Um, and pay it forward, really. Because and as Warren Zevon was asked by David Letterman before he died, what his last bit of life wisdom was, he said, enjoy every sandwich. And, I couldn't put it better than that. Be, there's no point in being an ass, be nice to people. Instead of hitting that accelerator pedal, just back it off a bit. You don't want to end up on YouTube in those 100 worst car crashes videos. And enjoy life and make life better for those around you as you can. And I know that sounds hokey, but um, sorry about that. I get spam just like everybody else does. Um, I know it sounds hokey, but it's true. I broke my leg a few months ago and was cat wheelchair bound. And when you're healthy, you never think about it. Think for a moment. Are you thinking right now about how well you feel? I'm assuming you both don't have COVID or something else. You don't.
No. Yeah.
You only think
Yeah.
about it when you're sick or when you have a broken leg or when you something happens, your eye, you know, And so live at the moment and enjoy it.
Thank you.
Grasshopper.
I love it. I love that for sure. Thanks again, Lincoln. Appreciate it. Best place we can check this out, get your book out. It's available on Amazon and all finer bookstores. And definitely think about independent bookstores. And if you listen to this, go get it at an independent bookstore for me and tell them the Media Giant sent you. Appreciate it, guys.
Well, I'll just say my wife just clicked purchase and she just bought it.
Okay, there we go.
Good.
She loved Relic too, by the way. That was
Thank
always
you.
by the bedstand.
Okay.
Thanks very much.